Perfect. So we'll wait for 2-3 minutes for everybody to join in, and then we'll start. Today's agenda is to finish the advent of Europeans and thereafter enter tomorrow the successor state concept. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Ajit, no issues? Good morning, good morning. As it is, I give you a basic summary of what we've done yesterday, and then we'll enter into what we have to do for today. Good morning, good morning. Don't worry about that, Ajit. Don't worry about it. Kiru, in a later stage, not right now, later stage. Mithun, don't worry. I'll give you answer writing questions. I'll tell you what to do with regards to that. That is my prerogative. Don't worry. Answer writing, I'll tell you. I'll discuss the whole timeline again. Don't worry about that. Right. Okay. Gyana, the quality of spices in India was actually quite good. Ajit, the SME is going to reply to your question. Don't worry about that. Constantinople is a very old Roman and Greek city. That is why it's very important in the larger context. Of no importance to you here. Good morning. I'll talk about revision strategy, everything. First, let's cover a certain portion, then I'll tell you what to do with it. Administrative competition. Yashk. I'll do that, Lakshmi, don't worry. That is what we start with. No problem, Yasin. Anybody who was not there yesterday, what you've missed is something you can, as it is, watch again, but nothing. I'll just repeat that basic concept. Okay. Now, see, what did we do yesterday? Administration is how a country is run, or bureaucracy, what you want to become a part of. World history is quite far away, Iftikhar. One of the last things we do in history. Okay. Mains oriented. Right. So yesterday we discussed 2-3 standard things. Actually, I will tell you the chapters which you should be reading out of the NCERTs, but at a later stage. Right now, concentrate and understand the basic concept. For example, Advent of Europeans is not there in the NCERT. So this is something you have to rely on the PPT itself. Right. Okay. So when we talk about what we did yesterday, we discussed the concept of Mughal decline. And when we discussed the Mughal decline concept, we were able to map the different concepts. For example, how the economic crisis in turn led to the concept of agrarian crisis. That in turn led to the concept of administrative crisis, which is called Jagirdari crisis. And over and above that, we were also able to understand how it will add to the fact that invaders are going to come, and the fact that religious policy of Aurangzeb did not help generally. But the most important takeaway from that section was the concept of weak successors. The fact that these people, the rulers who later or succeeded Aurangzeb, were not as powerful or not even as popular as any other ruler. And they will be a very important reason for different concepts vis-a-vis how the British were able to make inroads. And that is what we are going to discuss today. This was the first thing we discussed. Other than that, what we discussed was this basic timeline, and I'm going to repeat it to you generally in that regard. So how did we create a basic timeline? This is how we revise also. Now this is the revision of yesterday's class for anybody who is wasn't there for any other reason. See, we started with 1488, we reached 1498, then we reached 1500, then 1501, 1503, 1505, 1507, 1509, and thereafter we added the Goa sector 1510, 1511, 1513, and last was 1515. And very simply, each of these dates has a certain relevance for your preparation. Generally, I will tell you that though you don't have to learn this basic timeline, you just need to know the sequence of events. But the timeline based concept helps in revision quite well. And see, as it is easy to remember because the difference between each one of them is 2. This is 1, 2, 2, 2, 2, 1, 1, 2, 1, 2. So you can see basically that if you remember the code itself, that 1501, 3, 5, 7, 9, 10, 11, 13, 15, then you can remember it. Then you can generally remember it in that regard. So let's fill in the details, and this is what we did yesterday. Generally, the 1488 period is known for Diaz when Diaz will reach the Cape of Good Hope. Thereafter, Vasco da Gama is going to reach Calicut, and the Zamorians will meet him. Thereafter, you have Pedro Cabral, and he will reach again Calicut, but conflict with local and Zamorians. Thereafter, we saw 1501, the period in which you have Vasco da Gama Khan. Again, you can always say it with me. Wherever you're sitting, it will help you revise. You will have Vasco da Gama comes back and not met with friendly Zamorians. This is the first factory, Cochin, first factory. Thereafter, Cannanore. Thereafter, this is called the Battle of Chol. This is the Battle of Dew. This is Goa. 1511 is the Straits of Malacca. Then 1513 is Calicut. And last taken is the Hormuz Strait. How stated? Hormuz Strait. In the Battle of Chol, Francisco Almeida loses son, wins over the alliance. And the alliance here was basically Portuguese versus Egypt and Gujarat. So I think we all remember this basic timeline from yesterday. And I have to repeat one more thing, which is the concept of blue waters policy. It's a separate issue altogether. But I believe that we all understand this basic timeline, and I've revised it with you now. And this is basically how the Portuguese are expanding in the Indian subcontinent. So we remember this. If we do remember it, I will repeat the concept of blue waters policy, and then we'll go a step further. Zamorians were nothing but the what we call as local rulers who were there in Calicut. Homer Strait would be the, I'll show it to you on the map, only 1 second. Homer's is going to be this. So they were controlling Calicut, Cannanore, Goa, Kochi, Homer's, and the Straits of Malacca would be Indonesia. So very simply, we have discussed the concept of this. I've made it now 3 times. So I think we are clear with regards to this whole concept. 15 letter is Straits of Malacca. Straits of Malacca. Okay. Now, one of the reasons why the Battle of Chaul or Dew happened was because the Portuguese followed what is called the Blue Waters Policy, and this was launched by the first governor of the Portuguese in India. His name Francisco de Almeida. And Francisco de Almeida, very simply, wanted to, and the concept was domination of the Arabian Sea along with Indian Ocean world via what is called the Carthage system. What do you mean by Carthage system? That Carthage system basically was like a license or pass which you need to have, or permission letter which you need to have from the Portuguese. If you don't have it, they will either sink or seize your ship. This in turn brought them in conflict with the concept of Gujarat and Egypt, and that is why Almeida had to fight, his son had to fight the alliance. He lost his life, and thereafter he will avenge it in the Battle of Dew. All of this discussion was yesterday. So I hope that basically we understand these basic things before I take the story forward here on out. I'll talk about Albuquerque again, and thereafter I'll take the story forward. Are we clear with regards to this? I want everybody's consent, and then we move forward. Yes? Great. Now, what we actually have to now understand is how the Portuguese presence started to increase. But more than that, what is the role of 2-3 important governors? So, the first discussion we need to have is about a person called Alfonso de Albuquerque. Alfonso de Albuquerque. See, for you wanted to see Kochi, Goa, Hormuz, Straits of Malacca. This is how they technically were creating small nodes which were there. Small nodes which were there. Now, the Almeida discussion has already been done, being the first governor, and the Battle of Chaul and Dew. Now, we need to understand the importance of the second governor, Alfonso de Albuquerque. Now, Albuquerque is known for two basic things, which is he is the one who got in 1510 Goa from the Bijapur rulers. These are again local Islamic rulers in this sector, and the second most important concept was to negotiate a treaty with one of the greatest Vijayanagara rulers, Krishna Deva Raya. He had a good understanding with Krishna Deva Raya, and very simply, he was the one who was able to say that we will be the ones who will supply horses to the Vijayanagara state. Vijayanagara state. And more than that, he also appointed a personality called Frere Lewis to his court. So basically, there's a good relationship between the main power called Vijayanagara and the Portuguese who are only there in the Goan sector. But Alfonso de Albuquerque is also that personality who is considered the real consolidator. He is the real consolidator because he is the one who rapidly expands the position of the Portuguese in the whole Indian Ocean world. Whilst it was only Kochi or, for example, Cananore maximum they were having Goa. He is the one who went beyond the Indian subcontinent and took Homer Strait, who took Calicut again, took the Straits of Malacca, and very simply, he is considered one of the most powerful governors in that regard. And even when it comes to the Goan sector, he started to also intervene into local matters, in the sense that he is known for abolishing sati in the Goan areas. Sati is something which we will discuss in much more detail later, but is the concept of, and a very barbaric concept of, a widow uh, self-immolating herself on the funerary pyre of the husband, which is that she will sit on the funerary pyre of the husband and then she'll be self-eliminated. She's technically burnt alive in a way. And this is something which Albuquerque found extremely barbarous, and therefore he abolished it in his own dominions. So when we talk about his basic contribution, he took Goa, had a very good relationship with Krishna Devaraya, and he will expand it beyond Goa, Malacca, Calicut, Homers, and thereafter also introduce the policy of association and assimilation. He said that now the Portuguese can find a certain sense of belonging in the Goan sector, and let us now further create a certain community of Portuguese in Goa. So his major contribution is he is consolidating Ferrer Lewis, he is consolidating the empire of the Portuguese in a way. Now, assimilation means to get added to the subcontinent. But as you can see, there's a peculiarity. Albuquerque, Goa has an understanding with Vijayanagara state, and thereafter also the concept of assimilation association, and expands the position of the British of the Portuguese in the Indian Ocean world. Now, you can see one thing, that the Portuguese have a very peculiar system of colonization, which is that they don't want to go inwards, but they rather just want to control these small nodes. That at one point he wants to control Cananore, he one point wants to control Goa, Calicut, they want to control Cochin, they want to control the Ormuz Strait, they want to control the Malacca, but they don't want to go further inside. And this means that just by connecting these small dots throughout the Indian Ocean world, they argued that they would be able to dominate the Indian Ocean world generally. And this was one of the problems basically of the Portuguese in India, that basically they never understood what was actually happening. Very simply, by just controlling these small nodes, Omas, Goa, Kochi, you have Calicut, the Malacca. They at one point have also had Mozambique, Mombasa. You see, basically they are not expanding inward into the empire, but rather these are small dots which are connected together in order to create a certain presence in the Indian Ocean world. So the biggest issue for them, or the biggest weakness in a way, was that for them blue waters policy was very, very important. But tell me one thing, and I'm going to ask you a very genuine question here. In a ocean like the Indian Ocean, is it actually practical or physically possible to actually enforce the Karta system? Blue waters policy under Almeida already started. No. See, you can do it close to the coast, but in the Indian Ocean, the Portuguese cannot be anywhere or everywhere. Blue waters policy is that you need a license to trade in this whole area. Whatever that red area you see in the map, in order to trade in that area, you need a license. Now, very simply, this license can be only enforced when you're closer to the ports. If you are in the main ocean, who knows what? Blue waters policy in a way extended to the Bay of Bengal also. But It's saying that blue waters policy extended over South China Sea also, extended over Pacific also. The point is, as much as the Portuguese can talk about blue water, blue water, blue water, it's literally and practically non-enforceable, and that is the biggest issue in this Portuguese model. Why am I discussing this with you? Because we need to understand how is that they were actually there for 400 years in India, but were never as powerful as the British, because the British will come only in 1600. They were here in India since 1500, and technically from 1498 itself. Then why is that they never were able to create an empire like the British? They had more time, and that is based on this flawed concept of controlling points or controlling nodes or ports, or what we call as fortified settlements across the Indian Ocean world. This is the biggest issue here. The Portuguese failed to understand that colonialism does not work like this, which is just to control waters. You have to have a much bigger presence, which the British very quickly realized. And as it is, as one of you point out, Pranay is pointing out, you cannot have boundaries in an ocean. It is not the modern world of GPS, and you don't have what we call remote sensing, and you can't see the ships. It can be anything, everything, and the Portuguese had a very flawed problem, or basically the model itself was not right. So be it Almeida launches it, Albuquerque reinforces it, but actually was never going to work. Actually was never going to work because its intention was to control trade and not the people, and therefore it in itself makes no sense in that regard. So the fact is very simple, that the Portuguese never understood the policy of colonialism itself, or they had what is called a flawed concept of colonialism. Flawed concept of colonialism, which is basically not based on expansion but on controlling the waters, which is very simply only having these cartas or giving cartas. If you don't have a cartas, you may be seized or sunk, but the basic point of the matter is, how do you enforce something like that? For that, you yourself need at least 110 or close to 2000 ships in this area. That much manpower the Portuguese never had only. So Almeida started this policy, Albuquerque expanded it, but I hope that you understand the flaw in this vision of controlling waters, because controlling waters is not very easy, right? Are we getting you're getting my point, right? The flawed concept of cartas means letter. You're getting the flawed concept of Portuguese colonialism, because I'm going to expand it further as we go on. Now, we had Almeida, then we had Albuquerque. The next most important, or the third governor of the Portuguese in India, is a person called Nino da Cunha. See, you can see 1529, and here it technically is 1515. So between 1515 and 29, small governors, not important to us. We are going to discuss only the ones which are important to us. So you have Almeida, then you have Albuquerque, and then the next most important personality is a person called Cunha. Now, see, years of these governors are not important. Just remember their sequence. That's it. Okay. Almeida, Albuquerque, Cunha. Almeida, Blue Waters Policy. Albuquerque, Goa, and Krishnadev Raya. Now comes this person called Cunha. I'll discuss the concept of colonialism. Don't worry again, but let me go further. Now, the Cunha's most important contribution is that in 1529 he will shift the capital or headquarters of the Portuguese from Cochin to Goa, and now Goa will remain a Portuguese settlement from 1510, becomes a capital in 1529 till 1961. The Portuguese will be there in Goa, and we'll talk about Operation Vijay and how Goa was integrated into India in post-independence. But the basic point is that this shifting of capital from Kochi to Goa is going to be the last major change which happens in the Portuguese Empire, or if you want to call it an empire, or Portuguese presence in the Indian subcontinent. Now, Kunya also had a good understanding with the Gujarat ruler, but things got messed up very quickly. So, as soon as he assumes the office of governor, in November of 1529, he shifts the headquarters from Kochi to Goa, and he had a good relationship with Bahadur Shah of Gujarat initially, wherein when Bahadur Shah of Gujarat was in fighting with Humayun, the Portuguese were ready to help Bahadur Shah of Gujarat, and for his services, he also got the island of Basin. Basin basically is nothing but Bombay, or not what we call as Mumbai. This concept of what we call as island of Basin, the Goan, the Bombay sector, the Mumbai sector was given to the Portuguese via Bahadur Shah of Gujarat. However, when the Humayun and Bahadur Shah of Gujarat relationship actually became better, the Portuguese had to fight for Basin. And what is going to happen is that whilst they will be fighting in this sector, the only attempt of the Portuguese to actually reach or go to the Bay of Bengal sector, the Hooghly sector, there they will be expelled. There they will be expelled, and very simply, the area of influence they will try to go into the Bay of Bengal, but it will technically not work. It will technically not work. So, you can see that there's a progressive expansion of the British in India, of the Portuguese in India. They started with Kochi, and now I'm consolidating. Please pay attention. Then they went to Kannanur. Then they went to Goa. Thereafter, once they did get this whole sector, they further wanted to control parts which were previously not part of them. So from Goa, they go towards the Malacca sector. From Malacca, they will take Calicut. From Calicut, thereafter, they will take the Homer Strait. And then what will come to them is basically called Basin, which is nothing but the what we call as Bombay today. And later they will also get what is called Diu. They will also get what is called Diu. Now you can see their only attempt was Hooghly, but they will be very quickly expelled from this sector by the Bengal rulers itself, because the Portuguese are very what is called intrusive. They're very, very intrusive when it comes to internal politics in Bengal, and nobody wanted to tolerate that. So very simply, Portuguese had one issue, which is that they were always facing the Arabian Sea, and their presence in the Arabian Sea was actually quite a lot, but they never were able to control the Bay of Bengal fully. One more thing you need to understand is that they're only controlling these dots. They are not controlling anything internal. They just are in Goa, in Basin, in Calicut, in Kannanur, in Kochi. They don't want to go inwards, and therefore this is the concept of flawed what we call as colonialistic model. The model of colonialism was not based on expansion but on controlling the seas, and therefore Controlling the seas itself is a very difficult task, and the myopic vision, if you want to call it, or the flawed concept of colonialism itself was based on this node by node, simple point by point control. So they very quickly lost this sector. They very quickly lost this sector. Are you getting my point? At time, Hormuz was not part of India, not part of India. Hormuz and Malacca not part of India. Are we clear with regards to this? All the discussion we've had yesterday only. I've repeated now 2 times. Very simply, they are expanding. They are expanding in a certain way, but their expansion is not based on proper colonialism. The expansion is based on controlling certain areas. Basin will come to them via the conflict with the Sultan of Gujarat. When Sultan of Gujarat wanted help from the Portuguese to defeat Humayun, they got Basin. Later, the relationship between Humayun and Gujarat is going to become better. So the Portuguese will be abandoned in that way. Flawed means problematic. Problematic. So I will give you order of capture. I've already given to you. This is the order of some of you joining now for some reason. We already discussed it. That discussion we had in the first beginning only. You have Kochi, Cananore, Goa, Straits of Malacca, Calicut, Hormuz. Yes, everyone. Can I move on to the last major personality which we need to discuss? Yes, we can. Great. So the last major personality who we need to discuss, who came after Nino de Cunha, was actually a person called Martin Alfonso de Souza. Now, I'm going to write their names on one slide so that you can remember their names generally. See, when we talk about all of their governors, I want you to, whatever I'm writing on the screen is what I want you to remember generally. This is no unnecessary information, only that much information which is needed for the examination and your understanding in that regard. So, very simply, you have first is Almeida, second is Albuquerque, then you have Cunha, and then you have Souza. Can you remember these 4 names out of this discussion? Come on. You can remember just these 4 discussion. And here you remember for him Blue Waters Policy, Battle of Chaul and Dew. For Albuquerque, Goa, and rather not just Goa, but Goa, Hormuz, Malacca, Calicut, and understanding with Krishna Deva Raya. Cunha, shifting of capital from Cochin to Goa. Basin and Hooghly. You can now remember the subsidiary information written next to it. Second time we are discussing it. So that very simply, I am trying to consolidate everything. It's scattered. I'm trying to consolidate everything. If you can remember this much information, you can answer any question with regards to this area. Now what is Souza known for? See, the only accomplishment of Souza was not his own, but to actually allow what is the concept of promotion of Christianity. He allowed or he wanted to promote conversions and the basic point of the matter is under him came a very, very important personality called Saint Francis Xavier. Now, why is Saint Francis Xavier so important? Is important because Xavier is basically a Jesuit. Who is a Jesuit? Jesuit basically is a missionary of Christianity, specifically Catholic, and he has only one mission, which is to spread Christianity in India. Christianity in India. Jesuit means the person who spreads the message of Jesus. So Jesuit. Now, very simply, he is the one who is considered the father of Catholics in India. And while he will arrive in India under Souza, he will travel Goa sector quite a lot, but he will go as far as in China. But one of the most peculiar aspects about Xavier is that when he goes to China, he dies in China. However, his basic wish was that he should be buried in Goa. So what happens is that his followers go to China, dig up his grave, bring his body to Goa, and rebury him in Goa. So this is one of the grave there. His followers said that his wish was to be buried in Goa. So they will go, dig him up, bring to India, then go to Goa, rebury him. And there's a church called the Bon Jesus Bisikla at Goa, which is actually named after Xavier. Now, let's consolidate and then move on to the Dutch in that way. Souza, only important personality is Xavier, and very simply, he died in China and was reburied, reburied in Goa. And whatever I've written on the screen, if you can actually remember this much, the governors and the personalities related to the Portuguese is done. Almeida, Albuquerque, Cunha, and Souza. Jesuit missionaries mean you would have seen it that there are certain priests in Christianity who have a very specific task. Not is what is Xavier, it would be who is Xavier. Who is Xavier? Saint Francis Xavier is nothing but a missionary. He's a person who's a priest whose only task is to convert people to Christianity. So Francis Xavier was the one who actually was more important than Souza himself. But Souza very actively pushed for Christianity to be spread in India. So whatever is written on the screen, can we remember it for the examination? Yes, no, we don't have to do a thesis on the Portuguese. We just have to understand the basic points here. Yes? Okay. Now, what was the concept of, see, Lakshmi and a lot of you already asked me this question. When will we do previous year questions? You've not covered one module and you want to do previous year question. The problem of history questions is I have to cover a certain amount of material to then do previous year, because previous year questions are cross-cutting modules. So very simply, every Friday I do previous year questions with you. Other than that, understand. As it is, what will you do by solving previous year questions? Because questions don't repeat. I will tell you what is the point. So don't worry about that. Because I've seen 2-3 comments with regards to this. Previous year questions I will do every Friday with you. Have a proper set of 10-15 questions. But for that, you need to understand a certain amount of concepts. So you need to do that. Now, the Portuguese, now we are just consolidating the Portuguese area, were the first to issue cartas, which is nothing but blue waters policy. Further, Their fortified outposts served as custom stations where Asian merchants were to acquire Carthage, letters of protection which saved them from being attacked or ransacked by the Portuguese in the high seas. This is nothing but blue waters policy. And what they also used to do was they used to use what are called estates attached to the factories to facilitate and consolidate trade. Basically, their basic settlement used to look like this, that they used to have a port, they used to have one factory, and then they used to have a small estate. In this estate, they would do very limited agriculture, but one of the most important contributions of the Portuguese in India is actually a lot of different vegetables and fruits which you eat. Now, before I go into the impact, we've understood first the Portuguese coming. We've understood the timeline of their coming to India. I will make it again before I move to the Dutch. And we've understood the 4 important governors and 1 important personality, Xavier. Are we clear with regards to all of these things? Then I talk about this and then we finish the Portuguese. They don't deserve more time than this. Okay, perfect. Now, the Portuguese, as I said, brought with them, Fiotoras means estates. That's the Portuguese word for estates. Brought with them a lot of different crops. For example, potato, corn, pineapple, tomato, sweet potato, ladyfinger, tobacco, chili, papaya, sapota, lychee, orange, almond, groundnut, and certain type of black pepper and cashew. Whatever I've ticked are all the different crops introduced in India by the Portuguese. Now realize or understand, India is the land of potato, aloo. We consume potato at a rate no one else does. And basically till 1505 or 6, there was no potato in India. This black pepper you see is called the Latin America variant. So very simply, from ladyfinger to potato to tobacco to papaya to basically pineapple, everything we eat tomato and potato like anything. We eat bhindi, which is ladyfinger. We consume what is called papaya, orange, almonds, groundnuts, even cashews, kaju. Everything is actually something which was introduced by the Portuguese. These crops and their seeds were not known in India. And this also shows that our peasants were very quick in absorbing all of this. They were very quick to adopt it also. So before the Portuguese, none of these crops existed. Imagine if the Portuguese never came to India, what would our diet look like in India today? Imagine that if the Portuguese never came to India, then basically we would be a country with no potato itself. It would have come from a different root itself. But imagine, and this is a very interesting aspect with regards to how our diet changes with interaction with the Portuguese. They're also the ones who actually did shipbuilding in India. And you would know that Indian Navy, most of the ships, the best ships in India are made in Cochin. And the Cochin shipbuilding industry is considered one of the best in the world. And that is because that was actually established by the Portuguese. The first printing press also came in India with the Portuguese because they wanted to print the Bible in Kannada and Malayalam, the vernacular languages. And the Portuguese taught one thing to everybody, which is that Navy is important when it comes to sea trade. Now, I'll talk about decline separately. What I want to do. See, I have in each of these slides something like this also. I give you timelines by hand, but there are timelines like this also given in the PPT, which is what happened in 1498, 1503, 1505, 1509, 1510, 29, 35, 39, and even 1559. I give you this also. That is not the point. The simple point of the matter is the Estado, what is called the state, the Portuguese in India. You can see very clearly, they never went inside. It's always about dotting the coastline. It was always about dotting the coastline from Goa to Calicut to Mangalore to Kochi to the basin area to Bombay to Diu to Surat. Technically, they never captured Surat in that regard. Thereafter, in Hooghly, they never were interested in going inside India. Now, let me summarize the Portuguese. And then we move to the next major country. Is the Portuguese making sense? When did they come? Why did they come? What was the basic presence? What is their basic impact? All descriptive, but we have to understand something much more important very soon, which is the Dutch and the English, because Portuguese somehow turned out to be the most useless power in the Indian subcontinent. They never had the power to even do anything. So, Portuguese, revise with me. Come on. Came in which year? Come on. Came in which year? To India. 1498? Great. So 1498 is the year of coming to India. Very good. First factory, which place? Very good. First factory, Cochin, 1503. Then, what was the policy which they follow throughout their existence here? Very good. Blue waters policy. Very good. Perfect. Blue waters policy. Blue waters policy is based on what? Carta's system and blue waters policy is the same thing, which is controlling the seas. Controlling the seas. Now, what is the limitation of the Portuguese? What is the limitation? Why were they not able to rule India? What is the problem with the Portuguese? Yes, very good. Only control ports and forts, not go inside. The flawed colonialism concept is they never wanted to expand inward. And also, they will very quickly become very conscious of religious conversion rather than actually concentrating on creating a stable empire in India. So, their obsession with water will also lead to their downfall. They introduce a lot of crops, and that is the basic point of the Portuguese. Now let's go to Europe. Let's go to Europe. Our discussion with regards to Portuguese is clear. I want to go a step further. Can I do that? Portuguese, nobody has any issues. We've been doing it for now 2 days. Makes sense. Great. Perfect. Thank you so much for telling me. No issues at all. Everything makes sense. Okay. So the first power to come to India was the Portuguese. The Portuguese were the first to come to India. They were the first. The next are people who come from this country called Netherlands, but we also call them Dutch. They're called the Dutch. Now, what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to give you a sequence, because there's a very standard question which comes, and a lot of students mix up a standard thing. The second were the Dutch. The third were the English, and fourth were these people who come from Denmark. They called Danes. And last but not the least is the French who came to India. Last is the French. Now you can see that what is common to all of these countries is that they basically face the Atlantic Ocean. The Portuguese were the first to come in India. Thereafter, the Dutch will come, the English will come, the Danes will come, and the French will come. Now, what is the discussion we need to have is why would the Dutch come and what happened to the Portuguese when the Dutch came? So, the Portuguese, now please pay attention, I'm now going a step further. The Portuguese came in 1498 and basically till more or less 1600, no other power from Europe was interested in India or Indian subcontinent. They were not interested. As it is, they also did not have the capacity or navy to challenge the Portuguese. Now, this means that Dutch and Danes are not the same. Dutch come from Netherlands, Danes come from Denmark. This means that the Portuguese had a lot of time. Portuguese had close to 100 years to figure it out. And if the Portuguese had created a certain model which would have actually concentrated on territorial expansion, there was no chance for any other power to come to India, specifically the English. Now, the Portuguese foolishly in this period will pursue a policy of what we call as blue waters policy, and they will only concentrate on navy and controlling the Indian Ocean. This meant that they never properly had a presence. Never ever. They just were very simply playing with this whole concept that we'll control this, we'll control that, but no territorial expansion. So the problem for their presence is the model is not of territorial expansion, but is about controlling ports. This means that once the Dutch will enter, they will in a way have a clean slate. Because if the Portuguese had actually taken interest, they would have controlled areas, but they didn't. So when the Dutch come in 17th century, they have a clean slate. Why? Because these Portuguese are just dotting the Indian Ocean and they have no real control. Now the Dutch, why did they get interested in the Indian subcontinent? The Dutch were interested in the China and India overseas trade. So their interest is again commercial. It's a commercial concept. But unlike the Portuguese, where they just randomly sent travelers or they randomly sent governors, Dutch created a specific type of company, a governmental company called the Dutch East India Company, was created. Now, why are they called East Indies or East India? Because see, was created. They're called East Indies because there's already something called West Indies. West Indies is somewhere here in the Atlantic. So anything east of the Cape of Good Hope was actually called East Indies. And that is why their companies are called East India Company. For them, it's East Indies, but it becomes East India. But the exact word for the Dutch, this is the English translation. If you actually go for the Dutch spelling, the word VOC is used for the Dutch East India Company. Why VOC? Because if you actually see their original spelling, their Dutch spelling, the translation of East India Company starts with V, O, and C. The SME will push you that what we call VOC full form, and you will automatically realize why do we call them VOC? We call it East India Company, but obviously that is in English language. In Dutch language, the VOC full form is actually East India Company. So why am I saying this? Because in the paper, in the examination, anytime you see VOC, it technically means the Dutch. It means the Dutch. So the Dutch were the second to come to India, and the first Dutchman to actually reach this whole sector was a person called Cornelius de Houtman, who actually did not come to India, but went to Sumatra and Bantam, which is nothing but the Indonesian sector, in 1596. But they will establish, after realizing that it's a very lucrative trade, in 1602, the East Indies or the East India Company of Netherlands. The translation of this is VOC in Dutch. The SB just push the VOC full form. It's a Dutch word. You will obviously not learn it. But we write EIC. EIC in Dutch is VOC. EIC in Dutch is VOC. Obviously, you will not learn the Dutch spelling of it. But whenever you see VOC, it means basically the Dutch in India. VOC is a short form for East India Company in Dutch. Are you getting my point? How does it come to VOC? When I will expand this each word, it will be a Dutch word for East India Company. I don't want to clutter giving you that, but yes. VOC stands for Verinde Oostfrens Company. So this VOC, if you translate it into English, it becomes East India Company. Getting my point? Why do we call them VOC? I'll show you Java Sumatra, don't worry. Are we clear with regards to when the examination says VOC? What do we mean by that? Getting my point? Because it's a very important catch in the exam. They will never say Dutch. They will say VOC. So you should be able to understand that whenever they say VOC, it is referring to the Dutch. That is the only thing I'm trying to tell you, because the Dutch East India Company is called VOC in their own language. We call them VOC. Again, it's not difficult. If I write something in Hindi and then I convert it into or translate it to English, the first words will be different. So, same way, the real name of VOC, the real name of the Dutch East India Company is Verinde Ostrich Company, VOC, but we use the English translation of that, which is East India Company. Is this clear? Because it's a very minor point, but a catch in the examination. But a lot of students don't catch it that it's actually Dutch. Can I move next part? Yes? Okay. This company was empowered to carry war, conclude treaty and possessions. But see, when we talk about the Dutch, very simply, see, here you have the Portuguese. And the Dutch were very interested in this sector. The Dutch were extremely interested in this sector. This is called the Strait of Malacca. If you go, or if you need to go to the South China Sea, you have to cross the Straits of Malacca. And very simply, the Dutch, rather than concentrating on the Arabian Sea, will have their first position in Masulipatam. In Masulipatam or Masulipatam, they will, as it is, have a Bay of Bengal orientation. Because they wanted to control this part of the world, which is basically controlling any trade which happens via the Java-Sumatra sector. Now, the Portuguese obviously will resist, but the Dutch army at this point of time was much, much more powerful along with its navy. And the gain of the Dutch will be the loss of the Portuguese. Very simply, the Portuguese will start to lose out in the Indian Ocean world, because once the Dutch started to appear and the Portuguese used to say, take the cartas from us. Dutch used to say, why should we take the cartas from you? And very simply, they used to fight on high seas and the Dutch used to prevail. So technically, once the Dutch enter the Indian Ocean world, the Portuguese power start to very quickly go down. So the 17th century marks the rise of the Dutch and the decline of the Portuguese. And very simply, the Portuguese were concentrating on the Arabian Sea. They will automatically become Bay of Bengal oriented, because they wanted to control the Java-Sumatra sector, the Bantam sector, which is basically modern day Indonesia. But then why is that we did not become part of Dutch colonialism? Why is that I'm speaking in English and not Dutch? Why is that? The Dutch were the second to come to India. But this whole story I'm telling you is because why is that we went into English colonialism and not Dutch colonialism? It's a very valid question. I am speaking a colonial language, which is English. Now, why is that we don't think like a Dutch, we don't speak like a Dutch, and why don't we wear like a Dutch? What was the reason why the English were the ones who dominated and not the Dutch? Valid question? Question is valid, yes or no? I hope everybody is following me. It's a valid question. That if the Dutch were second, then how is that I am speaking English? And the reason for that is that the Dutch again got obsessed with Indonesia. The Dutch, though had multiple trading stations in the Bay of Bengal and even in the Arabian Sea, they actually were not interested in India. And this is called the Dutch obsession with South China Sea. They were obsessed in controlling this whole sector. And Indonesia was actually under Dutch colonialism. Dutch colonialism spread through this sector, and the Dutch, in a way, never were interested in expanding into India. And that was the reason why the Dutch were never able to capture India and never tried it also. They never tried it also. They were happy to dot this whole sector with certain ports, but they were never ever interested. They were happy with Moslipatam. They will get 2-3 more Pulikat and all, I will tell you, but they never wanted to go beyond that. So the ironical part is that the English were not the first to come to India. Ironically, neither the Portuguese nor neither the Dutch, having an advantage over the English, did not use it. And these technically fools, because Indonesia is not as prosperous as India. India is much, much, much more prosperous than the Indonesian sector. And we will become one of the most important colonies which the British are going to hold. These myopic colonialists never understood or did not want to understand the potentiality of controlling the Indian subcontinent. And therefore, it was their arrogance of just controlling certain points and controlling the seas that they never became like the English. Because I will show you, the English were very, very smart. And that is a story we will discuss most probably after the break, which is that how did the English expand in India? Because mostly the English used to very simply silently look at things, and whenever they got a chance they grabbed what they wanted to grab, or somehow it was us only which actually gave the English an inroad into India. That much patience neither the Dutch had. Portuguese as it is are useless. So I hope that you realize and you understand the larger discussion here. I will give you the facts related to the Dutch, but the most important discussion we needed to have is why is that the Dutch never expanded into India? And very simply, much like the Portuguese were obsessed with basically controlling the waters, and the Dutch were obsessed in controlling Indonesia. This point is clear. So if somebody asks you why don't you speak Dutch when they were second, the answer is Dutch were never interested in India only. Okay, perfect. So after their arrival in India, the Dutch founded their first factory in Moslipatam in 1605. I'll give you a timeline for this. They went on to establish different trading centers across India itself. They will capture the Nagapatnam sector near Chennai from the Portuguese, and they will make it a very important stronghold in the southern sector. But this is Moslipatam or Machlipatam now it is called. They will concentrate here. They will get this Nagapatnam. Thereafter, the timeline is very straightforward. See, I've given it to you in this form. Dutch will establish factories on the Coromandel coast, in even Gujarat, in Uttar Pradesh, Bengal, Bihar. 1609, they will introduce their first factory in Pulikat late. So you have Pulikat. Thereafter, one second, the color is not visible. Pulikat, this was 1605. This is 1609. Thereafter, Surat 1616. So let's add Surat to the story. Then Bichlipatam, Karikal, Chinsura, and Baranagar in 1653. Kasim Bazar and properly Patna, Balasore, and Kochi in 1663. So basically, I'm obviously not going to mark all of them on the map, but between 1605 to 1653 to 1663, the fact was that they started on this side. They concentrated, for example, the Hooghly sector. They also got Cochin from time to time. The simple fact is, they again, like the Portuguese, dotted the Indian coastline. But again, never went inward or never went for territorial conquest. No territorial conquest. The same pattern as the Portuguese. So I'm not asking you to learn each of them. Just remember one thing: 1605, Moslipatnam. Second, you can remember 1609, which is Pulicat. You can remember these two because for us, the Portuguese and the English are important. Just asking you to remember two out of them. Don't have to learn each and every fact. In no way, I'm not asking you, I'm not burdening you with this. Now, what did they do? They carried out indigo manufacturing in the Yamuna Valley, in central India, textile and silk from Bengal, Gujarat, Coromandel. You know indigo, what is indigo? What is indigo? Come on, tell me, what is indigo? Anybody knows what is indigo? Okay, Neil. So, Aya Naya Ujala, Char Bundo Wala, same. That is basically Neil, indigo. And indigo was actually a plant. We'll talk about blue dyes and indigo in a lot of detail, but you know basically what it is. Then you have textiles from Bengal, Gujarat, Coromandel coast. Then you have what something called saltpeter. Saltpeter is basically a chemical which is added to gunpowder to make it more explosive. It's technically a small mixture which goes into gunpowder. Some people call it potassium nitrate, but basically it's not potassium nitrate. But the simple point of the matter is saltpeter is an addition into gunpowder to make it explosive. That is why it is used and it was created from Bihar. Then you have Afim, opium, and rice from Ganga Valley. They will conquer the Ceylon, or what we call as Sri Lanka, from the Portuguese in 1658. There was a very small port at Colombo also for the Portuguese that the Dutch will take. However, Sri Lanka will be lost by the Dutch to the French and then later to the English after what is called the Congress of Vienna after Napoleonic War. I'll discuss this concept with you very simply. Napoleon was a French general who became the emperor, and then he started to fight in Europe. That is called the Napoleonic Wars. And very simply, when the Napoleonic Wars ended with Napoleon getting defeated, the simple point was the Dutch had been defeated by the French. So the French will first get Sri Lanka and then it will be lost to the British. And see, these are the coins which used to bear that VOC. We find it all across India. And that is why we know that the Dutch were quite regular and very, very interested in what is called internal trade. They loved the trade, but they never wanted to expand generally into India. They were more obsessed with the Indonesian sector. Now, we've done two countries. Portuguese and the Dutch. The reason for the downfall of the Portuguese is the reason for the Dutch to come into Indian subcontinent. Now, before I go to the English and discuss about the English, are we clear with regards to why these two powers never expanded in India and what was their basic model of colonialism? Dutch, very simply, came to India, Machilipatnam or Masulipatam first place. Thereafter, they expanded into the Indonesian sector. They were not interested in controlling the Indian Ocean world, or rather the Bay of Bengal or the Arabian Sea. They wanted to rather control the small strait of Malacca, via which all trade used to happen with China. They were interested in Chinese trade. Both of them were in conflict with each other. Portuguese and the Dutch were in conflict with each other. And one of the reasons for the decline of the Portuguese is the Dutch. And you can see it, it's written here also, that the reason for the decline was the Dutch As it is, there were problems with regards to the administration, because administering such a big area was not possible. So the most important reason for the Portuguese to decline were the Dutch. Dutch will break the back of the Portuguese, and thereafter they will also not conquer India. So my discussion as of right now is basically on what are they two doing and why are they not conquering India. Whatever information I've given you about the Dutch is more or less enough. The longest and the most important discussion we have is basically the English. And for that, I need to introduce to you a concept. Dutch mind map, there's nothing. Dutch, Indonesia, and simply not interested in India, Mausolepatnam. 4 facts you can remember, everybody. Come on. All filler moving towards the English. I need your feedback here. Lot of facts, trying to cut clear of that and telling you why is that the Dutch did not expand in India. Yes? Okay. Now, before I go to the English, I need to discuss a concept with you, and we'll talk about the English after the break. Now please pay attention and listen to me. When it comes to profit, when it comes to any form of proactive marketing, which company, a private company or a government company, is going to be more aggressive? A private company. Very good. See, what is common to the Portuguese and the Dutch, specifically the Dutch, is that their company was a governmental company. Now, if your company is a governmental company, then who pays the initial capital for the creation of this? The government. Very good. The government pays for establishment. Very good. Second, the orientation of a governmental company is never profit maximization, but it is actually more about survival. Because, for example, best example, BSNL, MTNL vis-a-vis Airtel and Jio, the fact is that they know even if they do not generate a profit, they will survive, as government will infuse more money. Am I right? A governmental company somehow is not aggressive but more stable. Can we agree to this? Can we agree to this? Yes? Very good. So this is the nature of the Dutch and the Portuguese. Dutch and the Portuguese. Now, when it comes to the English crown was very clear. The English monarchy said, we don't care. We have no intention in creating this type of a company. We are not going to give up any form of capital. We will not give money for anything, be it whatever. Yes, India trade is very, very lucrative. Well, I don't care. They were like, we don't care. So the English, who were represented by the East India Company formed on 31st December 1600. Previously, it was called Merchant Adventurers, later renamed as East India Company. This East India Company had no governmental funding. Zero, nothing. Rather, the East India Company, before it will come to India, was called a joint stock company. Now, this is the concept I need to discuss with you. What is a joint stock company? And then we take a break. Now, let's imagine. I want to start a company. I want to start a company. And the initial cost of that company is, for example, I need 10 lakh rupees. Well, I don't have the money. So what I do is that I ask each one of you that why don't you invest in my company? Give me 1,000 rupees and I will give you a share in my company, which you want, you can later sell. But initial capital will be raised via people coming together. So this is called a joint stock company in which the private individuals contribute the money together to create an entity. Now, technically, they are called shareholders or stockholders. The East India Company initial capital was not government money, but was private money, wherein the whole company was made out of contributions made by shareholders, or if you want to call them stockholders. So it's not crowdfunding. Crowdfunding is totally different concept. Rather, it is stockholding. The people invest in the creation of East India Company. Are you getting my point? How a joint stock company works? That basically everybody contributes certain amount and they create an entity. If it's not clear, you tell me. Very simply, government is not paying anything. So rather multiple people come together, merchants come together to form a company by contributing bit by bit. Nobody has the money to create a big company. So they actually give small contributions. You would have seen Shark Tank today. What the shark, for example, that person is contributing is like a shareholder. He gets equity. So in that sense, the shareholder for his contribution gets a certain percentage of that company. Are we clear? What is the concept of stock holding or joint stock company? Yes. But then why would you actually give money? What is the motivation for you to give money? It is to get something in return. And that return is called dividend. Dividend is nothing but dividend. Dividend is nothing but return on investment. Return on investment. Now, very simply, what will be this dividend? Dividend is nothing but the profit of the company. Now, if I have 100 shareholders and I have profit of 10,000, for example, I'll say I have income of, or not income, but we have revenue of 10,000 after cutting standard expenditure, which is the needed for maintaining the basic company. For example, 5,000 rupees. Profit is going to be 5,000 rupees. So this 5,000 will be distributed to whom? Will be distributed to whom? It will go to the shareholders. So everybody is going to get 50 rupees. This becomes your dividend. Dividend. Now tell me one thing. If I don't generate a profit, will the shareholder be happy? No. Therefore, a private company will always be under pressure to generate profit. And if it will always be under pressure to generate profit, it will be more aggressive. It will be more aggressive because it will always look for avenues to generate profit. Now, if you understand this concept, this will explain to you why the English were different to the Dutch and the Portuguese. The English East India Company was not a governmental body but a joint stock company. And therefore, it was very aggressive and proactive in Indian trade. So it becomes more efficient and it becomes more proactive in doing what it is doing in India. So if somebody asks you, India was ruled by a governmental company or a joint stock company, the answer to that question is by a joint stock company. And because it is a joint stock company, the aggressiveness of the English can be understood. Now, the last point I will tell you before I give you a break, because I will discuss the charter after the break, is that if I have 100 shareholders, not all can be decision makers on what the profit is going to be, where should we expend and this and that. So rather, I will take 5 people or elect 5 people as directors, and they are the ones who take day-to-day decision. These are called nothing but board of directors, but the English used to call them court of directors. They're called court of directors. They are the ones who manage the company. Now, very simply, let me bring all of this information together. So we have very successfully established that the East India Company in Britain is a joint stock company. It is controlled by court of directors elected by shareholders, and the ultimate motive of East India Company is profit, which equals to dividend. Does anybody has any issue in any of the words which I have written on this slide? No? If not, then I'll give you a break. No issues? Every word which is written on this slide makes sense and you're able to understand this difference. Difference between East India Company of Dutch and English. They can't be the same. They're called East India Companies, but one is the English, one is the Dutch, one is governmental, other is private. So, very simply, East India Company was set up in Britain. It's set up in Britain only. It is set up in Britain only. But it is not set up by the government. That is the only point I'm trying to argue here. It is set up in Britain. It is set up in Britain. VOC is the full form of the Dutch East Indies Company in Dutch. That's it. Yes, Portuguese and Dutch are governmental companies. Technically, Portuguese do not have a company only, but the Dutch had a governmental company. Clear, everyone? Come on. Clear? Then I give you a break for 10 minutes. 10 to 12 minutes as per need. Okay. Clear? Great. So it is what? 7:32. We come back at 7:45. Because you have been very cooperative. 3 minutes more. Thank you. See you at 7:45. Welcome back. Arnab, not black pepper of what sort we use, their own Latin American variety. Jasveer, you can just go to the PPT. Buy that book also. Go to the PPT. And you will be getting it very soon. Okay. What is their purpose? Trade. Trade. Okay. Now please listen to me, please. Now see. The Portuguese are already in India. The Dutch have also reached. All are for trade. All are for the lucrative, rather controlling the flow of commodities to Europe. Now you said, what is the purpose of East India Company, or why would there be a private company which will be formed in Britain for, what is the purpose of this company? Why would a private company be formed in Britain? And the answer is again the same. They wanted to have a share in this trade. See, India trade and generally China trade is very, very lucrative, in the sense that if you buy tea in India for 1 rupee, you can sell it for 100 rupees in England. That is the level of margin which is there. So obviously a private player will get interested. But unlike the Dutch, where there was a governmental company, in the context of Britain, the government was not ready to fund anything. So people came together and created a joint stock company to trade in India, and the basic orientation is profit and dividend generation. I hope this much we have already established, because now I need to add one more concept to it, and then the East India Company is done. Yes? Are we clear with regards to why and what is the nature? Yes? Okay. Now, once the East India Company is established, I write EICO, East India Company. This is for British. Blue water policy was started by Almeida, yes. Taken forward by Albuquerque, but not effective. There's a time difference. See, the time period of Dutch and Britain are different, yes. Dutch East India Company is formed later, but will come first to India. On the other hand, the East India Company of the English is actually created first, but will come to India later. So the year which we saw for the Dutch was what? Dutch East India Company was formed in 1602, and they will come to India in 1605. That way, the Dutch East India Company has been formed 2 years later, but they come to India in 5 only, whilst the English are going to come in 1608. That is why they're third to India, not first to India, second to India. Getting my point? There is a time difference in we count when they come to India, not when they are formed. Yes, okay. Now the East India Company, VOC means Dutch East. See, I can't emphasize this enough. When I say VOC, it means Dutch East India Company. When I say EIC, it means British East India Company. Can we be clear about this? Yes. Okay. Now as I said, East India Company has been formed. But if you are a private player, then can't anybody else also do the same and start to trade in India? If I can create one joint stock company, I can create multiple joint stock companies. Once East India Company is created, some people came together again, created another East India Company. Then they created another East India Company. Then they created another East India Company. There can be multiple companies. When you go to the shop, when you say that please give me toothpaste, there are multiple companies. You are not bound to buy any. Multiple people can do it. Now, if there are multiple players, is it good for the British to have multiple players or only one player? It's good to have one player because then they are not undercutting each other. So, very simply, East India Company is formed as a joint stock company. But the problem is that anybody can do that. So they need to find a certain concession or need to get a concession from the state, which makes them the only authority or the only company which can trade on the behalf of the British. And what they do is basically they obtain a charter. They obtain a charter. A charter is basically a royal document issued by the monarchs or monarchy of the English, which gives exclusive powers to the East India Company to trade in East Indies or east of Cape of Good Hope. Cape of Good Hope. This is called in our language a monopoly. East India Company is given a monopoly. No other British trader can trade beyond east of Cape of Good Hope. So very simply, if you are at this Cape of Good Hope, I hope you can see the map which is in the background. If you are east of Cape of Good Hope, in this whole sector, the British can only trade via the East India Company. Who gave the charter? The monarch. We'll talk about that. Who was the monarch? First understand, the king gives the charter, the queen gives the charter. Very simply, what is the advantage of this? The advantage is so that British companies do not compete with each other, and undercut the interest. You are right that East India Company is not a government company. Then why monarch will give royal charter? Because royal charter is free. पैसा मत मांगो बस. Don't ask money from the king. They said, at least give us a document. Give us a document that we are the only ones who can trade. So they were like, yes, no issues. But if you ask them for money, they will not give you money. It's a document which generally allows the East India Company to operate vis-a-vis the only company with British interest. The East India Company is not government. Yeah. How can English monopoly issue a charter without concerns? Now, tell me one thing. What about other companies? Tell me one thing. Listen. If today I give a charter to Tata that the only company which can trade in Africa is Tata, does it actually have any bearing with any other country or any other company? No. So then how do other companies come, or how do other countries come? Very simply, this only pertains to British operators. This only is about British operators. The East India, English and British are the same people. The British charter will only apply to the British. So basically, East India Company has a major, it's a very unique institution. Why? Because firstly, East India Company is a joint stock company. What does the crown get in return? The crown gets in return any trade which is going to happen is going to help the people of Britain. That is the basic concept. See, I'm now summarizing this. Please pay attention. They don't get taxed. They actually don't get taxed. Is this company also consists share of Dutch company? No. Dutch company is Dutch company. Britain company is Britain company. Britain, England, English, same thing. Very simply, East India Company is a joint stock company, which means that it is a private company and it works for dividend and profit. Second, in order to make sure that the British can compete with Portuguese and the Dutch, they make sure that the East India Company is given a charter which gives it monopoly over China and India trade. Because if there was competition, then it would have meant that basically British interest would have undercut. British interest would have got undercut. So no individual British trader allowed. Yes, no trader beyond this point. No trader beyond the Cape of Good Hope can operate. The ship needs to have two flags. It needs to have the flag of Britain and it needs to have the flag of East India Company. Very simply, anybody who is trading other than the East India Company outside the Cape of Good Hope area, east of Cape of Good Hope area, only the British East India Company can. It's not confusing. It's not difficult. Very simply, who was the head of the East India Company? Again, somehow 10 minutes break, we have lost everything. Who is the head of the East India Company? The court of directors. That is what I told you. Next time I'll give you a break once I finish the topic, because now I get it. What is happening is you're asking me very standard question. What is joint stock company? See, listen to me very clearly. It's not rocket science. Very simply, British monarchy does not want to push in governmental money. So they say, okay, don't give us money. At least give us a charter. They create a company, they get a charter, and that charter gives them a monopoly over any trade which happens. And please understand this. Portuguese also trade beyond Cape of Good Hope. Understand one thing. How does a British charter apply to the Portuguese? Why are you bringing in other countries? Sorry. Tell me one thing. If today I issue a decree that only Tata is going to trade in Africa, does it apply to a company in Britain? No. So why are you bringing in the Dutch? Why are you bringing in the Portuguese? It does not apply to them. It is to compete with them. I said no trader will going to. No trader beyond the Cape of Good Hope can operate. I'll write it, okay. From the British side. Now better? Now no confusion? These 3 words is going to change everything? Very good. Perfect. Okay. Can I move on? Now, if they say what is a charter, can you tell them what is a charter now? East India Company represents Britain. Yes, that's the basic point. Okay. Now, see, the first English to come to India was actually a person called Thomas Stevens. He was again a Jesuit refugee and reached Goa for the first time. Then in 1590, Ralph Finch came during the reign of Akbar. No, charter is not a farman. Again, farman is given by a Mughal, charter is given by a British king. So then why are you mixing these two things up? See, 1579, a Jesuit comes and looks at Goa and sees the prosperity of the Portuguese. Then 1590s, Ralph Finch is again a Britisher who reaches the court of Akbar. Then in 1599, again a British trader called John Middlehall is going to reach India, but he will reach India via the land route. Now, looking via this basic experience of these traders, one thing is very, very clear that Indian trade is very, very lucrative. Indian trade is extremely lucrative. Now, this in turn will lead to a group of merchants. A trading body is going to be created, and that trading body will be called the Merchant Adventurers, but their name will be later changed. Into the Governor and the Company of Merchants of London trading in the East Indies. But this does not roll off the tongue well. It's a little bit difficult to say. So they simplify it to East India Company. And the East India Company will be formally created and given a charter on 31st December 1600 by Queen Elizabeth I. And this will give them a monopoly for 15 years. Very simply, what have I discussed with you till this point? What I've discussed with you is that simple: Portuguese in India, Dutch in India. Portuguese are trading, Dutch are trading, lucrative trade. English also want a share in this pie. And very simply, the aspect is the English saw that the Portuguese and the Dutch are actually prospering, and therefore they came to India, or they wanted to come to India. So they create the private body called Merchant Adventurers were created, later renamed as East India Company. Once it becomes a joint stock company, initial capital is there. It gets a charter from the Queen, and therefore it becomes the only sole representative of the British east of the Cape of Good Hope. Are we clear with regards to this? I want everybody's consent, because now I will go into a discussion which is extremely important for you, because a mains question can be asked from this area very easily and very simply. Yes? Okay, very good. East India Company is created by the English, yes. Now how did the British find their feet in India? Now, what I'm going to discuss with you is basically a very standard question, can come and in the examination, is that how did the English find their space in India? And that was basically via a whole flurry of, or what we can say, a whole series of concessions and orders. And a order in Mughal terms is called a farman. So farman, order, same thing. So these series of concessions and farmans are seen as the stepping stone of the English in India generally. Now, the first and foremost point you need to remember is, see, the Portuguese have been there in India for close to 100 years. Now, they don't want anybody else to trade, but the Dutch very systematically took away their power in the Arabian Sea. There's a Mughal ruler, and you would know his name. His name is Jahangir. Jahangir, basically, the son of Akbar, Salim, he is annoyed by the Portuguese. The Portuguese sit in his court. They always are doing politics. And there was a person called Father Pinheiro who was representing the Portuguese in Jahangir's court, doing politics. Don't let them to trade, don't let them to trade, don't do this, don't do that. So Jahangir was annoyed by the Portuguese and he wanted a solution to the Portuguese. So when in 1608 the British will formally, the East India Company will formally send a person called William Hawkins, the Portuguese will try to remove or will not allow him to even meet Jahangir. Will not allow him to meet Jahangir. They will create a lot of pressure on Jahangir that basically Captain Hawkins, when he will approach Jahangir's court, there will be a lot of Portuguese resistance. And the Portuguese will not let even Jahangir meet with Captain Hawkins because they knew that there's a new player in the town called the English. Now the English had to prove that they were an alternative to the Portuguese, and as it is, the Portuguese were acting over smart. How Portuguese find their place in Jahangir's court? Standard Akbarian interaction. Akbar allowed the Portuguese to enter. Akbar was a curious man, allowed Portuguese to enter the court, and all different religions were there represented in the court. So that is a Mughal policy. They allow anybody and everybody from different stratas to be part of the court itself. So now Portuguese give a lot of resistance to the English coming. The turning point where Jahangir will realize that the British can be an alternative to the Portuguese is when there will be two wars which will happen, 1611 and 1612, wherein the Portuguese will fight the English, and the English will defeat the Portuguese. Now Jahangir's eyes will lit up that, okay, there is another European power which I can use to remove these annoying fathers in my court. And the English were good in one thing. That they are very good in appeasing people. They will make you feel that you are on the top of the world, but they are technically the same people who have a knife on their back. Every time they wanted to meet Jahangir, they took a lot of different gifts. And once the Portuguese will be defeated by the English, Jahangir will accept that the English should come to his court, and they will give him extremely interesting gifts. A globe which Jahangir had never seen. His name was Jahangir, the person who rules the Jahan. And he was obsessed by the globe. When you will do art and culture with me, I will show you his all paintings used to have a globe. For the first time, he was given spectacles. And he was intrigued that how can things come close to him. He was given a hourglass and he was obsessed by these things. He had never seen these things. Wine was given to totally filled up with gifts. The British know how to take out anything from you via basic appeasement. So it was Jahangir who actually gave the first concession to the British in India via this interaction, and that is called the Farman of 1630. And then he also gave another Farman, which is called Farman of 1615. Now, you see, I'll just read this part out to you. Visit of Captain Hawkins, Jahangir's court, major Portuguese pressure to not meet him. Thereafter, in 1609, when the British will realize that the East India Company needs more time, James the One will remove that 15-year concept that the charter is only given for 15 years. He will make it indefinite. In between 1611 and 1615, the British will defeat the Portuguese twice. Captain Middleton will defeat the Portuguese at Bombay, and Captain Best is going to defeat Portuguese at Swali, which is near Surat. This is going to give Jahangir an idea that why not use the English to undercut the Portuguese. Are you getting Jahangir's thought process? That Jahangir could see that my father have given me this Portuguese in the court. Why not use the English to undercut the Portuguese and remove their influence over the whole coastal sector? A farman is nothing but an order. Farman, farmaiye, farman, order. So, very simply, the starting point of this relationship is basically based on the mutual annoyance with the Portuguese. Both hate the Portuguese. That is why both came together. If this is clear, now I want to go into a whole discussion which is extremely important for your examination. Because now I will go one after the other, give you farmans which will change the fate of the British in India. Yes? Very good. So we all understand how they got the first inroad. Charter is given by the English crown, has nothing to do with the farman. Okay. Is everybody with me? Please, you have to be more vocal. Then I will go forward, because hereafter it will become a little bit heavy. Fleet means a small army, a small navy. Okay. Yes? Sadhna, what's the issue? I will Mantaj, if you were there yesterday, I give you a mind map and I give you a timeline in the end. How can I give it to you the first? First, let me discuss everything with you and then I will tell you. Okay. Now, purely I am talking about 1600s. This is not the period of decline of Mughals. Mughal decline will happen in 1650 and onwards. Okay. It is not confusing. It is nothing. Simple. Listen to me. 1608 they come. Are the English able to meet the port? Are the English able to meet Jahangir? Yes or no? No. Very good. Okay. You have Portuguese block the English in Jahangir's court. Yes. Shruti will come to that. First, let me give you the basic story. We will do multiple revisions. Don't worry about that. First, listen to the story. Now 1611, 1612. English defeat the Portuguese at Bombay and Swali. which is nothing but Surat. And this gives an idea to Jahangir to undercut the Portuguese via the English. Now, this will lead to the first concession to the British, which is called concession of Farman of 1613 and then Farman of 1615. Till this point, anybody has any issue? Because now I start to talk about what did the Farmans actually say. No issues. Okay. Now, what is a Farman? Listen to me, Vishnu. I've said it 3 times. It's an order. It's an order. Order Farman, straightforward. Okay. Now, this 1613 Farman allowed the British to establish their first factory at Surat. First factory of the Portuguese was where? First factory of the Portuguese was where? Cochin. Okay. First factory of the Dutch? First factory of the Dutch? Mauchlypatnam. Very good. So, first factory of the British? Surat. Very good. So, these are standard questions which can be asked. Surat. Very good. Now, this is a major moment because Surat at this point of time was one of the most important and busy ports, and the factory in Surat will allow the British to access the Arabian sea trade. What is more important is by having the British in this sector, the blue waters policy, which had more or less become useless, could be ignored and undercut via the presence of the English. Because the English are there, blue waters policy is more or less useless because the English will never let the Portuguese enforce that. And whenever the Portuguese tried to enforce it, they tried to enforce it in 1611 and 12, it did not work. So this was the basic idea of Jahangir, that if I allow them to be there, they will in turn become more and more powerful, and that will in turn remove this annoying policy of the Portuguese to get these licenses. But whilst the 1613 Farman is considered important, the one of the most comprehensive Farmans is going to come in 1615. Is going to come in 1615, which is called the 1615 Farman. Both are given by Jahangir only. And this Farman will say that the British can trade in Agra. Broch is nothing but the Gujarat sector, Ahmedabad, Mauchlypatnam, and even Bengal sector. So this basically is like a permission letter that we have been given the mandate by the emperor himself, Jahangir, to trade in the interiors of India, be it Agra, be it Broch, be it Ahmedabad sector, be it Mauchlypatnam sector, or be it Bengal sector. Now, this means that unlike the Portuguese, they are now becoming more and more part of the Indian subcontinental trade. So, the first two farmans are seen as stepping stones, that the English could find their feet in these two sectors. First in Surat, getting their first factory, and then were able to find a major inroad into the Doab sector, Agra, Broch, Gujarat, Mauchlypatnam, meaning the Bay of Bengal, and even Bengal, and generally Bengal. So the presence of India is surely but slowly expanding in the Indian subcontinent. And this would be good news for the East India Company generally, because the more they trade, more the profit, more the dividend. These two farmans clear? Why are they considered so important? Because after this, there's a major concession which is going to come, which is called the 1632 Golden Farman. Come on. Are we clear with regards to 16, 13 and 15? No issues here? No issues here? Okay. Perfect. Clear? No issues. Perfect. Now, the next concession which came is called the 1632 Golden Farman. Now, first Farman gives them the right to establish a factory at Surat. Second Farman gives them the right to trade internally in Agra, Broch, Ahmedabad, and in Bengal, and even parts of what we call as Mauchlypatnam. These two basically are trade concessions. They are basically allowing them to enter into the Indian trade scenario. Now, on our peninsular India, there used to be on the Bay of Bengal side, there used to be a polity which is called Golconda. It's called Golconda. Golconda basically was a Islamic Sultanate or an Islamic state which came out of the Bahmani state, which was a contemporary to the Vijayanagara state. We will discuss this when we will discuss medieval India. But basically, you had Ahmednagar, Golconda, Bijapur. Bijapur gave Goa to the Portuguese. Same way, on the other side, you have Golconda, which is Golconda. Now, the British used to trade on multiple ports of the Golconda state. So now what the British actually do is that they go to the king of Golconda, Sultan of Golconda, and they say to him, see, we trade in Golconda. He said yes. He said, what is the maximum amount of custom duty or tax you have collected from us? Because if you are trading at a port, the local ruler is going to take certain amount of custom duty or taxes from you. So it's like a basic tax which they collect on the trade. So the Golconda ruler says that I have from time to time received close to 500 pagoda. See, pagoda is basically gold coin. It was a currency of the Vijayanagara state. And Golconda ruler says, I have maximum taken 500 pagodas from you. So the British say one thing. Let's do one thing. I will give you 500 pagoda, which is your annual tax from which you get from me. I'll give it right now only. But after giving this amount, you will let me trade freely without taxes throughout the year, and you will not touch my trade. So think of it like I go and eat a sandwich at a shop. I go and eat a sandwich at a shop every day. Every day. So I eat it every day. So I say to the shopkeeper, I eat every day. So let's do one thing. How much money you generate from me? He says you eat 2000 rupees worth of sandwiches. So I said, okay, I give you 2000 rupees right now only. But now I can have as much sandwiches as I want, but I'm giving you the money upfront. It's prepaid. Now, if you look at it, it's a dumb move. Why is it a dumb move? If I pay upfront and then I can trade freely? What is the catch here? Yes, Chaitanya, very good, very good. What if the trade volume increases? Very, very good. Perfect. See, this 500 pagodas, the East India Company used to give, for example, for 1 ton of trade they used to do. Now this ruler does not realize that he gets this 500 on 1 ton. Now the British say, we will give you this 500 upfront. You let us trade now unrestricted, without any supervision and without any taxes. So we will trade tax free because we have already paid you 500 pagoda. Now what the British will do is, as soon as you pay that 500 pagoda, they will increase the tonnage to 100 tons. So in 100 tons, they should have paid 5,000 pagodas or 5 lakh pagodas. But now, at the same amount, pagoda means silver gold coin of this area, at the same cost, they have now increased the tonnage multifold. This is why this is called a golden farman. Our rulers were technically too myopic. They went and said, the Jahapana gold, the Jahapana, the king of kings, Golconda ruler. We are beggar English. You take 500 rupees, 500 pagodas from us. We give it to you right now. You let us trade unrestricted. And that useless ruler does not realize that in a way, he does get 500 pagodas at that point of time. But isn't he losing out to revenue if the tonnage increases very quickly? If they realize that the golden farman would never have been given. So what is the golden farman? The golden farman basically was a farman given to the British by the Golconda ruler, under which the British could trade unrestricted without taxes, unrestricted without taxes, after paying 500 pagodas, gold coins, annually to the king. To the king. And what the British will do is they will increase tonnage multifold. Very simply, you buy a internet pack for 500 rupees, but now you used to only use 1 GB, now you will use 400 GB. So this is called the Golden Farman of 1632. It was literally golden because the fact was that the British misused it very quickly. Wasn't there any rebellion? Because these rulers were so dumb, they never understood they were getting cheated. That is the basic point. The simple point is that they were so myopic in their vision that they did not understand what was actually happening. According to them, take it. I am the ultimate ruler of this world. What can they take? My fate. Take it. You are a beggar. You take this farman. I am a generous ruler. And the British will very systematically use this puppy face that we are the English. We don't know what is happening. Give us some concessions. Give us certain form of help. They did not know that they were technically cutting the roots of India, and they will do it. They will not do it here. They will do it multiple places. The fact is that they will act innocent. The concept of puppy faces, they will act innocent. This is called ultimate diplomacy. They act innocent. हमें पता ही नहीं क्या हो रहा. Take 500. Take 500 pakodas. We are very good people. Take 500 pakodas. This is the problem. So 1613, 1615, 1632. 32 clear? Then I'll move to the next one, which is called 1639 Chandragiri Farman. Yes? Very good. Is this making sense? I'm trying to give you the basic overview. Then I'll put it on a timeline and give you a mind map. So don't worry about that. Anybody who is thinking, how do I learn this? I will tell you how to learn it. But as of right now, are you able to create this basic picture? How does the British find its feet in the Indian subcontinent? Very simply, it gets concession after concession by acting dumb and innocent. That is the only thing. Okay. Now, the next is called 1639 Chandragiri concession. Under this, what is going to happen is that the British will go to the Tamil Nadu sector, and there was a local ruler of Chandragiri. See, you would have realized one thing. I'm not giving you the names of the rulers because there's already too much to learn. Why give you unnecessary fact? For me, these ruler names are not important. And this is always standard policy for me, that I never give you anything which you don't need. So you don't have to remember these names. So why should I bombard you with them? Already too much to learn. So 1639, there was a local ruler who ruled over Chandragiri, and the British will go and say to the Chandragiri ruler, you mighty Chandragiri ruler, we've never seen a ruler like you. Handsome, more than that, so much wealth. You have so much wealth, and we are trading at Mausleypatnam. But Mausleypatnam, our trading station is small. So can you do one thing? Can you lease out certain area to us? Can you give us certain area to us? We'll pay rent, but we will also build a fort on it. So the Chandragiri ruler thinks, okay, rent is also going to come, and he is also saying I'm handsome, so therefore he's a good man. So let's do one thing, let's give them a concession. It's literally not what happened, but I'm trying to tell you how appeasement works. Very simply, the local ruler, the local ruler of Chandragiri is going to grant, and that area today is actually Chennai, Madras. The Chandragiri concession is actually nothing but Chennai. Chennai was leased out by Chandragiri concession. Local ruler of Chandragiri is going to grant the British a small settlement on the coast, which was called Madras, Chennai. In return for very low rent, and the British will build their first fort in India. Which is that fort? Anybody from Chennai, tell me, what is the fort where the Legislative Council and Assembly sit of Tamil Nadu? Very good, Chaitanya, great. Fort Saint George, and they will shift their headquarters in the Bay of Bengal sector from Moslipatnam to Madras. This is the origin of Madras. Madras, Chennai, the ruler only took, it is believed, close to equivalent, today equivalent, 10,000 rupees to give Madras and this fort to the British. So the simple point is, this will allow the British to shift their major headquarters from Moslipatnam, which already had the Dutch and the Portuguese also, and rather shift to a place where they could build a fort and have proper trading station. As it is, you would know, Chennai is a very good natural harbor. Chennai is a generally, though it has a problem that it is quite deep waters, vis-a-vis Moslipatnam, it is a better harbor than Moslipatnam. The whilst Bombay and all are much better harbors because of the continental shelf being bigger, Chennai is much better than Moslipatnam for trading. It's closer to the Strait of Malacca, and for more than that, there is no Portuguese and there is no Dutch to annoy the British here. So the 1639 Chandragiri concession is considered a major concession which they got, which allowing them to create a permanent fort on the eastern coast. Yes, British were very good in diplomacy. They are not good in diplomacy, they're good in appeasement. Chandragiri concession clear? Because then I go to 1651. Chandragiri concession clear? Yes? Great. Now, I'll make a slide in the end, whole everything I will summarize. Don't worry about that. Now comes all the 1651 Farman, also called Shah Shuja Farman. Shah Shuja Farman. Now, please listen to me. 60% of all Indian trade of the British used to happen from Bengal. And Fort St. George. Now, The English, what they do is that they approach the governor Shah Shuja, governor of Bengal, and they do the same drama which they did with the Golconda ruler. They go to Shah Shuja and say, let's do one thing. We'll pay you 3,000 rupees annually. Let us trade for free. Let us trade for free. Again, Shah Shuja will not understand the mechanics of how they increase tonnage. And he will foolishly, again, allow the British to trade in Bengal duty-free against the payment of 3,000 rupees annually. This farman is considered single-handedly the most important farman which the British were able to obtain. Under the 1651 farman, the British, against the payment of 3,000 rupees or rupiah to the Bengal authorities, could trade tax-free and unrestricted. So I technically don't need to explain to you what is the lopside or the issue here, which is that again the British is going to increase tonnage beyond that 3,000 rupees. Very simply, only 3,000. 3,000 is not a very small amount at that point of time. But the point is, if you are paying 3,000 for 10 tons and now you are getting 100 tons, then very simply that 3,000 is nothing for you. That 3,000 is nothing for you. So we are clear with regards to 1651 Sarvan also. How is it important and how is it generally straightforward? A concept of the Golden Farman replicated in Bengal. This is a Bengal-centric Farman. Golden Farman allowed them to trade for 500 rupees annually. This is also annually. For 500 pagodas annually to trade in Golconda tax-free. Here it is 3,000 rupees annually to trade in Bengal tax-free. Are we clear? Yes? Yes. Very good. Now, the next major impetus is going to act tax-free means that once they've paid this 3,000, nobody can put any tax over and above what they've paid over 3,000. Very simply, if I paid 3,000 upfront, all my trade happens without giving duty. Now, the next major breakthrough which the British are going to get is because of a marriage. Weren't the rulers aware of the East India Company? They may be aware of the other farmans, but see, understand one thing. When you are a ruler and you are when you are a ruler and you have power, you technically sometimes lose sight. And that is the basic point here. These rulers have very myopic vision, because they are not able to see what the British are doing in the long run. According to them, okay, I'm getting 3,000 rupees annually, but they are not able to actually see the larger picture. This is where we come in. We are sitting in 2023 and saying, don't do it, Shuja. Don't do it, Golconda. They will rule us for the next 200 years. This is what we are doing. That we are saying, this is a mistake. I am judging them by saying he is useless, he is a mistake, he is foolish, he is this, he is that. But I am sitting in 2023. In that moment, the rulers used to think, okay, guaranteed 3,000 rupees is a very big amount. Are you getting my point? This is called hindsight 2020. It's called hindsight. That very simply, we have the historical distance to say that don't do it, you're dumb. But for them, that was the most logical move at that point of time. Is this making sense? What I'm trying to say? That the politics of that period and the politics of today, and we know what the British are going to do in the larger picture, we have the luxury of looking at in the larger context. But the rulers can't do that. They can only look at it in a smaller context. We can see it in the larger context of how they will destroy India. Right? Okay. Now, the next concession is going to be because of a marriage, and that is going to be the marriage of a Portuguese princess called Catherine of Braganza with a English king, Charles II. And in the dowry of Catherine, the Portuguese will transfer Bombay to the English. See, now they are big kings, so obviously they will not give money. So they gave Bombay. They said, you want dowry? Take Bombay. Whole Bombay is yours. Now, the Portuguese never developed Bombay as a very, very good settlement. And more than that, they never used it at full potential. Now the crown got Bombay, Basin, Bombay, that whole sector. The crown got Bombay, but what will they do? So the crown, what they did was that in 1668, this is 1661, 1662, in 1668, the crown will transfer Bombay, whole of Bombay, will transfer Bombay to the East India Company at annual rent of 10 pounds. You give us 10 pounds and you take Bombay. And what is going to happen is, by this, the British will shift their headquarters to Bombay from Surat. Now, do you want to know why it's called Bombay? Is this making sense? How did they get Bombay? How did the East India Company get Bombay? The dowry will be given to the crown. The crown will give it to the East India Company at the annual rent of 10 pounds. The name Bombay actually comes from this. Bom means good in Portuguese. That's why it's called Bombay. Bo means good. So the Portuguese used to call, see, Basin is a part of Bombay sector. That whole sector is Basin. You have Sopara, then you have Thane, then you have Bombay. Whole sector is called Bombay together in that sense. Basin is Bombay. It's part of Bombay. So the name Bombay comes out of the Portuguese word Bombay, which is good bay, because Mumbai is till today one of the best natural harbors in India itself. And the Portuguese were dumb to again give this as a dowry to the English, and the English transfer it further to the East India Company. So now What is the headquarters of the British on the eastern coast? Eastern coast. I'm saying eastern. Madras. Madras. And western coast? Bombay. So you see, these are two exclusive positions which they get where no other European power is there. Where no other European power is there. So now, just to give you a basic recap, we started in 1613, Surat, 1615, Agra, Mauchlypatnam, Broch, Bengal, and Ahmedabad sector. 1632, Golden Farman. 1639, Chandragiri concession. And 1651, the Delhi, that is not K10, that's a symbol of pound. Then 1651, the concept of Shashuja Farman, and then Bombay by 1668. Does anybody have any problem? 3 more farmans are left, rather 2 more farmans are left, or 2 more discussions are left. No issues here? Okay, very good. Now, see, the British were misusing the Bengal farman quite a lot. Meaning at rupees 3,000, they were actually trading too much in Bengal. And it was actually the most unlikeliest of rulers who actually noticed this and took action. There is not a farman in 1661 or 1668. It's a British concept. The British give it. British get it, British give it. That's a basic concept of the British. The unlikeliest ruler here is Aurangzeb. Aurangzeb hated the British. Aurangzeb knew that the British were actually misusing everything what they were doing in this whole sector. And Aurangzeb actually, though going through an economic crisis himself, saw that there was a leakage. He said that why is that Bengal revenue so less when the British are trading so much? And that is why there was a major clash in the period of 1688 and 89 between the English and Aurangzeb, wherein Aurangzeb said that we are not going to continue with this 3,000 rupee concept. We're not going to go with this 3,000 rupee concept. You pay up for everything. And the British in retaliation will attack Aurangzeb. But Aurangzeb was also not that weak. The Aurangzeb will actually defeat the English and seize all their possessions in Bengal and cancel all their farmans. So basically, between the period of 1680 to 89, the British had a nightmarish time with Aurangzeb. Nightmarish time. Aurangzeb took everything from them. Aurangzeb even said that Mauchlypatnam you have to give up. You have to give up the Bombay sector. Surat, they were expelled. They were taken. They were actually removed from most of the areas. They said, enough is enough. Your over smartness is over. However, the English are English. And what they did was that in 1690, they will constantly plead to Aurangzeb. Please, sorry, galti ho gayi, sorry, my mistake, sorry. And they will say, we will pay you 1.5 lakh rupees for giving us whatever you've taken from us. And Aurangzeb, who's going through an economic crisis, he will accept that money. He will accept that 1.5 lakh rupees and he will pardon the English. And in 1690, all the powers will be restored. And it is here that India was lost. It is here that India was lost. We did have a chance to remove the British, but the British somehow got it back via appeasement and money. And the British will now have a very standard strategy, which is to remain under the radar. Don't come in the eyes of Aurangzeb. They will very quietly trade from all these centers once they get pardoned. But as soon as Aurangzeb will die, they will find a major, what we call as opportunity under this, the last discussion, last Farman. It's called the 1717 Farooq CR Farman. And thereafter I'll give you a summary, don't worry, we'll do it. Farooq CR Farman. The Farooq CR Farman is considered the Magna Carta of the British in India. Why is it called the Magna Carta of the British in India? Because basically it's like the constitution of the British in India, because such major concessions were given at this point of time that the British could now trade at all levels without any problems. Magna Carta is because, see, you've done polity, right? You've done polity. Your polity is done. Yes. So if you've not done polity, the British don't have a written constitution. The British have what is called the Magna Carta. Magna Carta is their basic constitutional tradition. So Magna Carta actually means their constitution in a way. So it's called the Magna Carta of the British in India. Magna Carta of the British in India. Very simply, it creates a new mandate for the British in India generally. So can we look at the provisions of this and then summarize everything? Can we look at the provisions? Yes? Okay, let's look at the provisions. In 1717, an English mission led by John Sermon is going to go to Farrukhsiyar and get 3 farmans together called Farrukhsiyar farmans. And these farmans will change everything for the British in India. Now, the first point which was made was that in Bengal, the company import-export were exempted from additional custom duties for the payment of 3,000 rupees as settled earlier. So this was just a reiteration. So they restated what was done by Shah Shuja. But the blunder was done here. In Surat, same thing will be done, wherein for an annual payment of 10,000 rupees, the East India Company will again be exempted from levy of all duties. Basically, now in Golconda, in Bombay, in Golconda, Bengal, and in Surat, these 3 places, they cumulatively pay 13,500 or 13,000 rupees and 500 pagodas, and very simply they trade tax-free. Imagine the level of trade which the British could do at the payment of this nominal amount itself. Such a big concession it was that very simply Surat was also sold off in a way. Thereafter, in Hyderabad, the company retained its existing privileges by paying the rent at Madras. Basically, if they're paying the rent at Madras, they can operate in the Hyderabad sector, which would be modern day parts of Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, and Andhra Pradesh for free. So if they're paying rent at Madras, they can trade for free in this sector. Further, the company was also allowed to create what is called Calcutta properly, and more to it. Calcutta was basically three small villages together are called Calcutta. Calcutta or Kolkata today. I'll tell you the three villages which are there. You have Sutanti, Kalikata, and Govindpur. These three together are called Calcutta. And at Sutanati, they will actually create Fort William, or what we call as the second major fort of the British in India. And under this, they will be given more land to create Calcutta in a way. But the biggest mistake which they will do is these two things. First, the company has certain privileges. It can trade for free in Golconda sector. It can trade for free in the Bengal sector. It can trade for free in the Madras sector. It can trade for free in Surat sector. Now, what the Farman says is that they can transfer this to anybody via a dastak. Meaning, if I have this privilege, the East India Company can give it to you or me vis-a-vis a dastak. Basically, they made this concession transferable, which made company very, very attractive as a political ally. So if you are a political ally of the company will give you the dastak, and you can also trade for free. And last but not the least, which is the dumbest of all moves, is that the British were allowed to mint their own coins in Bombay, and it was equivalent to the Mughal coin. And that is why this is called the Magna Carta of the British in India, because it's technically sold off India totally. 10,000, then you can take Karnataka, then you can use Hyderabad sector, and then you can also take Bengal sector. You can transfer it also. But what was the need for allowing them to mint their own money and making it equivalent to British or to Mughal amount? Meaning that a coin of the British was equivalent to the coin of the Mughals. Imagine that Tata today introduces a currency, and it is 100 rupee Tata currency is equal to 100 rupees of what we have given by the RBI. This is equivalent. It's like Tata, it's like any other private company printing its own money itself. This is considered the biggest inroad which ever was given to the British into the Indian subcontinent. Now that I've completed this whole process, 50%, 60%, are you able to see how the British actually were quite different to the Portuguese and the Dutch, and very slowly, actually, like termites, started to enter into the Indian subcontinent, and slowly but surely took concessions and found their feet, or they used it to, in a way, ground themselves in the Indian subcontinent. Is it making sense? Because then I'll give you a summary, and then I'll give you one more important thing. I'll give you a question, a mains type question, and then you will realize what is the purpose of this discussion. Can I give you the question, and then I can summarize everything what we've done till this point? Yes? Okay. Perfect. Great. So see, whatever we've done, I'm just repeating it out of the PPT so that there is further reinforcement. This is my second revision. Then I will do third revision via a what we call as timeline. Okay. We did this slide. Now you see, the English position was improved by the Golden Farman issued to them by Sultan of Golconda in 1632. On payment of 500 pagodas a year, they could free trade at ports of Golconda. In 1639, Francis Day, an officer, obtained the site of Chennai from the ruler of Chandragiri. The Moslipatam council member, a merchant called Francis Day, received from the ruler of Chandragiri the permission to build a fortified factory at Madras, which were later created as Fort St. George. And in 1640, the English will shift their headquarters away from Moslipatam to Madras itself. Then Bombay will be gifted to King Charles II from the Portuguese for marrying their daughter Catherine of Braganza in 1662-61, and the East India Company will receive the Bombay settlement from the Crown at an annual payment of £10 only in 1668, and Bombay will then become the headquarters of the Western Coast, removing it from Surat. Then we know that in 1698, 3 villages will be granted by the Nawabs of Bengal to a person called John Chadnock, nothing but an English, and he will create what is called Calcutta and then create the second fort of the British in India, which is called Fort William. Thereafter, the Mughal and British relationship is going to more or less break down. We already know that in 1613 and 15, Jahangir was the one who gave them the concession. First concession was to make their first factory at Surat, 1613. And in 1615, a very celebrated Englishman, Thomas Roe, is going to get permission from Jahangir to trade in Agra, Ahmedabad, Broch and Moslipatam sector. And in 1651, Shah Shuja will give the Golden Farman of Bengal in a way by allowing free trade privileges at the annual payment of 3,000 rupees. However, this all will go down south when it will be about Aurangzeb. Aurangzeb will try to take all of these concessions back. So the English will attack Hooghly and declare war on Aurangzeb. Mughals will retaliate by capturing all the settlements in 1687. 1688-89, John Child will try to seize Mughal ships and also stop a ship which was going to Hajj. Mughals captured all the factories of the empire, Bombay, Surat, Moslipatam, and all of them only will be released after 1.5 lakh rupees will be transferred as compensation. 1690, Aurangzeb is going to pardon the emperor, and in 1691, Aurangzeb is going to reiterate the Shah Shuja Farman and say that yes, the concession stands. But the biggest concession which came was the Farooq Siyar Farman. Clear? Anybody who had any doubt? I've discussed everything again, but now through the PPT itself. Yes? Okay. Now let me give you the timeline. See, the timeline is given in this form also, but I will make a different one for you. First, let me give you the question so that you understand what you can do this with this information. Dastak means a pass which the British can give to transfer their basic concept. Okay. Now, see, how can they ask you a question from this area? And this is a mains level discussion we are having. The question is going to be like this. The establishment of British in India was based on a series of concessions and farmans. Comment. This is a 250 word question, 15 marks. Now, whatever information I've given to you is basically going to go into a question like this. This did not come in the mains. I'm giving you a practice question. It says the establishment of the British in India was based on a series of concessions and farman. Comment means that they're asking you to tell them, is this statement correct? And if it is correct, how is it correct? So is this statement correct? Yes, it is. Now, what you need to do is that whatever discussion I did with you, you have to condense it and write an answer. Now, three things. For most of you, you've never written an answer. What I want to do, you will start with 1613 Farman and you will go till 1717. What I want you to do is, don't have to ace it or nail it in the first go. I'm going to give you a summary. Whatever you can write in 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hour, in 45 minutes, in 10 minutes, you write it down. Because I want to see, are you able to articulate your mind, what is in your mind on paper? Tomorrow when I come back, I will tell you how to structure the answer for this type of a question. So your homework is going to be that you can write an answer for this question after understanding everything. And the most important fact is going to be, you can't open the PPT. Learn the PPT, learn the facts and write the answer. Because some of you, what they do, very conveniently, open the PPT and also write the answer. No, don't do that. Try to remember. And if you want us to evaluate it, properly, you can send it to an email ID called islive@byju's.com, or you can also send it to targetprelims@byju's.com, and within 3 to 4 days we'll check it and send it to you also. So we can do that also. If you are confident, you can do that also. So target prelims, and there's also target IAS also. Target IAS. I would suggest send it to this one, IAS Live. You send it to IAS Live. Multiple will become too much for you. Target IAS, you just send it on this. That's it. IAS Live, forget the other ones. Now, if you understand the question, can I give you the summary and we can end for today? Yes? Okay. Now, this is the summary of what we've done today. We finished the Portuguese, we understood the Dutch, but I think you now understand vis-a-vis the English, how the Dutch and the Portuguese stories is nothing. Very small stories and actually don't really matter. This is where what it really matters. You send it to our target IS, no issues at all. You send it to target IS, Geo, whatever you said, no issues at all. Now, this is your mind map for today. Okay. You want to add 1661, but technically 1661 is not direct. 1668 is related to East India Company. Okay. Now, English tried to influence Jahangir for first time. Portuguese block it. These two together are called Jahangir Farmans. This will give them first factory at Surat. trade permission in Agra, Ahmedabad, Mauslipatnam, Broch, Bengal. Thereafter, this one is called Golden Farman, under which Golconda ruler allows trade in ports tax free or duty free in return for 500 pagodas annual payment. Then this is called Chandragiri Farman. Under this, Madras will be given to British by Chandragiri ruler, Fort St. George, Eastern headquarters. Then 1651, you have Shah Shuja Farman, trade in Bengal duty free in return for 3,000 rupees annually. Right? Then comes 1668. This is Crown transfers Bombay to East India Company at annual rent of 10 pounds. Thereafter, Aurangzeb versus British seizes all possessions and cancels all concessions. Aurangzeb pardons and reinstates the concessions, and last but not the least, this is Farooq Siar Farman, under which Bengal 3,000 rupees, Surat 10,000 rupees, Hyderabad in the rent of Madras, Dastak minting of coins equivalent to Mughals. Done, everybody? So basically, this is how the British found their feet in the Indian subcontinent. So if you can summarize all of this into the answer, 250 words, then your job is done. Golconda and Hyderabad are different, yes. Farrukhsiyar gave Farman. Yes, Farrukhsiyar gave Farman. Was there any limit to the mint? No. Hyderabad in the right of Madras means you can trade for free. All of this is trading for free. Trade free. 16, 11, 12 Bombay transfer, I think, check one. 16, 11, 12, 1668. I don't know why you're talking about 16, 11, 12. I know what I've written. Concept of dastak is that all of these privileges could be transferred to a person via dastak. Yes. It says Hyderabad trade freely. Now, if I'm writing in short, you're not understanding. In Hyderabad, the company retained the existing privilege of freedom of duty in trade and had to pay only the rent of Madras. Are you getting this point? This is the point I've written there. But I can't write all of this there. That is, I've written it there in that sense. That within the rent of Madras, the people, they can trade in Hyderabad for free. 1615, it is not free trade. It's just that they could trade there with the permission of the king. There's no concession there. So is this summary clear? And very simply, this is going to become the Western headquarter. Yes? Okay. Now, 1717 is here, Farrukhsiyar Farman. Now, please understand, this whole summary is written in this way also. East India Company formed 1609, 1611, 1613, 1615, 1618, 1632. You have 1632, then 39, 51. What happened in 1667, 1717? I've given it to you in this form also. So don't worry, you can also revise through this. But this makes more sense because you can revise with me. So the PPT has it in multiple forms. So the summary is not the problem. I have in every slide like this. The basic point of the matter is today we finished the big three. Portuguese is done. The Dutch are done. The English are done. I can presume that you are in a position to understand. 1661, they get it from Portugal. 1668, it is transferred to the East India Company. So for me, it's 1668, not 1661, 2 rather. So Portuguese presence, Dutch presence, English presence. Why were the English more hungry? That question has been answered. Why did the Dutch not concentrate on India? Because of the fact that they were in Indonesia. The Portuguese had a flawed concept itself. Further, Dutch, English, Portuguese, very simply, were three different entities. These two governmental, this is a private body. Is this clear? There was a permanent factory at Surat, yes. Now, very simply, tomorrow when we come, we will do two very important things. First, we will do Danes and French. Maximum half an hour discussion. Thereafter, this second module is over. But please remember, tomorrow we start a very important module called Expansion of British Raj, which is we'll start with successor states. We'll go to the concept of rebel states. And then we will go into conquest of Carnatic sector, Bengal, Maratha, Sikh, and Mysore. So the next two classes, which is Thursday and Friday, is going to be about, by Friday, the British will have won over the Marathas, Mysore, the Sikh, and the Bengal sector. We'll talk about Plassey, we'll talk about Buxar, and that is now what is left. More or less, advent of European is done. Done? So I hope you can simply create a basic picture in your mind. Basic picture is there. You can write the answer today, tomorrow, whenever you like it. So basic picture is there in your mind, and that is my only request is revise once. It will come to you very quickly. It is fresh. It is going to come to you very quickly. You don't need to go to any book right now. Just concentrate on the PPTs. 1615 was not about Nirbhay factories. It was about trade, allowing them to trade in these areas. Right? Okay. With this, if you don't have a question, thank you so much. I'll see you tomorrow. Same time. Have a very productive day. Revise this and come. We'll talk about Danes and French and then enter a separate issue altogether. If they give Dastak to anybody, they also get free trade. Yes. Dutch still in Moslipatnam. Yes, they were. Later, they'll sell it off. We'll talk about the Dutch and the English also together. Don't worry. Danes were not interested. They were more Catholic, and they will go. Magna Carta is different. Magna Carta is the constitution of Britain. Carta system is the Portuguese system itself. How many people can get Dastak? As much as you want. What is the confusion? 1615. The 1615, they will be allowed to trade. They can go and trade with the permission. Factories are not allowed to be set up. In conclusion, we have to criticize British or our rulers. Obviously, the British. I'll tell you how to approach that. Sir, were the multiple headquarters at India same time? Yes, there were multiple English headquarters, Bombay and Madras. Perfect, Pintu. Great. Can difference between Portuguese and English being asked? No. Is there depression during Aurangzeb? That question is incorrect because there's no concept of depression and recession. Farrukhsiyar Farman from Bengal. Yes, Farrukhsiyar Farman 3000. No, it restates the 3000 concept. See, Nirbhay, Google says something and I am telling totally different. I am saying trade privileges into these areas. Factories will be set up later. If the Google wants to say it is that, 1615, I leave you to decide who you need to trust. 60% of trades were taken from Bengal and only 3000. But Surat is a much bigger port, much bigger port. Kolkata is also an headquarter, not right now, but later for sure. Fort William will be set up at Kolkata. We'll discuss about Fort William because we will discuss black hole and all and everything with regards to that. When Aurangzeb restored power, he also gave earlier privileges. Yes. Okay, perfect. See you tomorrow, same time. Take care. Bye-bye. Have a great day. I hope everything is making sense. See you. Bye-bye.